Hi, my name is Luis Fonan, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Duolingo. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to thank you all for being here, for taking the time off your busy schedule to hear about all the exciting things that we've been working on here at Duolingo. As you know, this is Duocon. This is our annual conference. In the past, of course, this conference has been in person. For example, last year in 2019, Duocon was in London, and we were super happy to have it there. We had hundreds of people attend in person from all kinds of different continents. And we had also, of course, thousands of people watch us online. And this year we were going to have it in person as well in New York. But of course, COVID happened. So we moved the entirety of the conference online. But we've been really excited about just how many people have responded that they were going to watch, and the fact that we have thousands of people watching it right now. So that makes us really proud and really happy. But I want to announce that next year, of course, COVID permitting, we are going to have the conference in person again, and we're going to be having it in Brooklyn. We're going to be sending more details about it later. But the thing that I'm most excited about is that one of my personal heroes is going to be speaking at the conference, and that is Trevor Noah. For those of you who don't know him, he is very well known in the United States. He is the host of a TV show called The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. And he's going to be there. He also happens to speak many languages. And so I'm very excited about next year. As you know, our mission is to develop the best education in the world and to make it universally available. When I started Duolingo about 8 years ago, I wanted to do something that was related to education. Now, my views on education are very related to where I'm from. I am from Guatemala, and this is a very poor country. By the way, shout out to all the people who are here viewing from Guatemala. So I'm from Guatemala, and a lot of people talk about education as something that brings equality to different social classes. But I always saw it as the opposite, as something that brings inequality. Because what happens in practice is that people who have a lot of money can buy themselves the best education in the world, whereas people who don't have very much money barely learn how to read and write. So what I wanted to do was to do something that would give equal access to education to everybody. Now, education is very general, so we decided to start with languages. And in particular, we decided to start with teaching English. English is a language that really can change your life. It changed my life personally because of the fact that I learned English. I was able to come to the United States and work on starting a company like Duolingo. So we decided that we were going to teach languages. So about 8 years ago, we launched Duolingo as a fully free way to learn languages. And we are really proud of the fact that now Duolingo is really the most popular way to learn languages in the world. And what makes me the proudest is that Duolingo is used by all kinds of people. For example, Syrian refugees use Duolingo to learn English, or a lot of times the language of the country that they had to move to. And at the same time, for example, Bill Gates uses Duolingo to learn languages. And that fact really makes me excited, because the fact that some of the poorest people in the world use the same system to learn a language as one of the richest people in the world tells you that more money cannot buy you a better education. And that really is what we wanted to do with Duolingo. Now, of course, we've grown a lot over the years. We are by far, again, the largest way to learn languages in the world. We're approximately 20 times larger than the next largest language learning platform out there. And there's a lot of impressive statistics. For example, there are more people learning languages on Duolingo in the United States than there are people learning languages in the whole US public school system. Here's a graph of our monthly active users. As you can see, we now have about 42 million monthly active users. And of course, in the last few months, we've seen accelerated growth, and that has to do with COVID. While people were basically stuck at home, many of them decided that they were going to do something useful with their time at home, and they decided to start learning languages with Duolingo. It makes us very proud to be a meaningful part of people's lives during these difficult times. So this is kind of what we've seen over the last few months. I did want to take some time to talk about some product changes that I'm very excited about that also were not covered in the other Duocon talks. We've had a lot of different talks about very exciting product changes or improvements to Duolingo, but there were some that we couldn't have a talk for. So let me tell you a little bit about a few of them. They're very short. The first one that I want to talk a little about is that recently, we've basically almost doubled the amount of content for some of our most popular courses. In particular, the courses to learn English from Spanish and Portuguese, and the courses to learn French and Spanish from English have about twice as much content, which means you can learn to a significantly more advanced level. I am very excited by this because I personally am learning French on Duolingo, so I've been just getting a lot better with it with all this extra material. We also this is not yet live, but it's going to be live soon. We are completely revamping our Japanese course. We know from a lot of your comments that we needed to improve the Japanese course. So now we have an entire team working only on improving our Japanese course. So we're going to be teaching a lot better how to draw the characters, and we're going to be doing just a full revamp. And hopefully in a few months, the course is just going to be significantly better. Very excited about that. Also very excited about something that you may think is relatively small, but while you're doing Duolingo, sometimes some of the exercises now say that this is a hard exercise. This is very exciting for us because what that means is that we actually have turned the lessons into adaptive lessons. These hard exercises appear there when you're doing very well on a given lesson. We start giving you exercises that we know are hard just for you so that you learn better. And so the lessons are now adapting a lot more to how well you're doing. And this, of course, allows us to be significantly more efficient in our teaching. And the last product improvement that I want to talk about is Kudos, something we internally called Kudos, which basically now allows you to congratulate your friends when they did something awesome on Duolingo. For example, if they reached a 30-day streak, you can send them a congratulatory message. This is really encouraging. For example, I recently hit a 1,700-day streak on Duolingo, and I got hundreds of people congratulating me, and I felt really good. The reason I'm excited about this is because we know that the hardest thing about learning a language is staying motivated, and this really helps you stay motivated. Basically, your friends keep you motivated. And the last thing that I want to talk about is the Duolingo English test. What the Duolingo English test is it's a proficiency exam to prove that you know English. We started this project a few years ago because we got a lot of people emailing us, telling us, hey, thank you for teaching me English. I wasn't able to afford learning English before, but now I'm learning English with Duolingo, but now I have a problem. I need a certificate that I speak English. Could you give me a certificate? Since we got so many of these emails, we looked into this whole English certification market. And what we found was really crazy. About $5 billion a year are spent by people certifying that they know English. Usually, there's many reasons why you may need to certify that you know English. For example, if you're applying to come to a university here in the United States from a non-English speaking country, you have to take a standardized test that proves that you know English. Or if you're trying to get a work visa in the UK, you have to take a test that proves that you know English. So a lot of money spent on this. Usually, the way people certify that they know English is by taking these standardized tests. There's a few of them. For example, there's the TOEFL, if you've heard of it, or there's the IELTS. And all of these tests are pretty similar. They all cost about $200. In order to take them, you have to go to a physical testing center to take the test. And because you have to go to a physical testing center, you have to make an appointment weeks in advance. And so the whole process takes a few weeks. It costs $200 and you have to go somewhere. That sounds annoying because it is, but it's actually way more than that. Most of the people that are taking English proficiency exams are in developing countries. Now, in a developing country, this is a significantly worse experience because $200, that's a month's salary. The testing centers, they're not in every city, so you may have to travel to take the test. So the whole thing, we thought we could do a lot better. So about 5 years ago, we launched the Duolingo English test, which is a significantly cheaper exam. It's only $50 as opposed to $200. And you can also take it online as opposed to having to go to a physical testing center. And so we launched that, and over the last year, we've seen great adoption of the test, and we've seen a lot more organizations start accepting the test as proof of English proficiency. For example, we now have more than 2,500 universities that are accepting the test as proof of English proficiency. And this whole thing got accelerated partly because of COVID. Because people had to stay at home, all of the testing centers for the other offline tests had to close. So there was no way to take, for example, the TOEFL or the IELTS. And so we were the only real test that people could take. And because of that, a lot of organizations started accepting us. And also because of that, a lot more people started taking our test. We've seen over a 1,500% increase in number of tests taken this year as opposed to the previous years. And we're very excited about that. And that, for example, this is really allowing people who before just could not take English proficiency exams to take them now. So for example, here's just a picture of Frank from the Democratic Republic of Congo, who was able to take the Duolingo English test and now is a student at Columbia University, one of the best universities in the world. Or Yane from Korea, who also took the Duolingo English test and is now a student at University of Pennsylvania, again, one of the best universities in the world. What's really exciting to me about this particular project is that it really is aligned with our mission of developing the best education in the world and making it universally available. We are really trying to cut the barriers down, and that's making us just very proud. Thank you to everybody who is listening and staying on top of all the exciting things that we're working on at Duolingo. Thank you also to all the speakers for your amazing speeches. And I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you hopefully in person next year in Brooklyn. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for that, Luis. It's really fascinating to hear about all of the stuff that's happening at Duolingo, and particularly how things have been over the last few months during COVID. How have you found working through this pandemic?
Well, it's been an adventure. I mean, I did not. So we're all now working remotely. Duolingo is entirely a remote company now. We're going to get back to not being remote, hopefully, when this whole thing is over. But so we're all working remotely. I did not realize how well it was going to work. I mean, right before going fully remote, I thought this was going to be, really, our productivity was going to go screech down to a halt. It didn't. Of course, I also thought that we were only going to be working remote for 2 months. It turns out now that it's probably going to be well over a year. So it's been interesting, but fortunately we continue. The company continues operating very well. And I'm very proud of the team to be able to, not only continue making progress, but also we had pretty severely increased traffic, and all our servers and everything stayed up. And I think that speaks to all the great work that the engineering team had been doing in the past.
How much increased traffic are we talking?
Well, it depends on the country. I mean, for some countries, it more than doubled. I mean, China is a good example where it more than doubled. So it depends on the country. And it was an interesting thing. We actually saw, we could see it from our traffic. We could see all the different countries that were going into lockdown. So, first it started with China, pretty soon it was Korea, then Japan, then we went to Western Europe. So basically, as soon as a country got into lockdown, about 1 or 2 days later, our traffic would massively increase because people were bored at home and they thought, well, I may as well just learn a language. So it was a pretty interesting view of how the virus spread to the world.
Luis, you mentioned that you've been learning French. Are you learning any other languages on Duolingo at the moment?
Well, I spent a long time learning Portuguese, and I actually am pretty good at Portuguese now, and I'm starting to learn Japanese with our new and improved course that I have access to much earlier than everybody else. I am very, very early there. I'm just trying to memorize the characters. There are a lot of characters.
1,700 days sounds like a very impressive streak. Is that a record for Duolingo? Is there someone out there streaking even longer than you?
It is by no means a record. There are people with significantly longer streaks. What happened to me was one day, 1,700 days ago, I had a pretty long streak too, but then I lost it. And then I could have fixed it because obviously I work at Duolingo, so I could have had somebody fix it, but I didn't want to do that. So, fair and square, my streak is actually 1,700 days, and I lost it, whenever that was, 5 years ago, I don't know.
Do you ever add languages to Duolingo just because you think, well, I want to learn that one? I'll sort it out for myself.
There's one that we haven't quite added yet, but we are working on adding, which is an indigenous language of my native country of Guatemala, which is called Quiche. I would actually be very interested in learning this language, but it's not there yet. We are working on adding it, and the reason I'd be interested in it is because it's basically from my country. I have no idea how hard it'll be to learn it on Duolingo, but we're working on it.
Yeah, how do you choose which languages get added to Duolingo? Because with a lot of indigenous languages, you might not have such a big audience, but the protection and preservation of those languages can be really critical work.
Yeah, we're very proud of having some of the smaller languages. I mean, for example, we teach Irish, we teach Scottish, Gaelic, we teach we also teach some constructed languages like Esperanto, but we teach Guarani, which is another native language, indigenous language of Latin America. So we teach a few of these indigenous or smaller languages. Unfortunately, there are 6,000 languages, and we only teach 40. So we're a long way there, a long way from being there. But the way we choose is there's a few things. Obviously, we get requests for adding languages all the time. I mean, I don't know. We pretty much. I'm going to assume that pretty much every language on Earth has been requested by somebody. The reason we don't add all of them is because each one requires some amount of maintenance and effort from us going forward, and it takes a while to construct. But what we look at is how many people are interested in learning that language. That's important. We also look at whether there's a compelling story behind it. It's something that there's just something that would catch people's minds. We're interested in that. And we also look at whether we have a good set of volunteer contributors, because all these languages, we have to get volunteers who speak the languages, and we look at whether we have a good set of them. And then based on all of this, there's one other thing we look at, whether we think Duolingo is going to be good at teaching that language. There are some, for example, if the language requires its own script, that's going to be harder than if the language uses the Roman alphabet. So we take all of that into account, and we have a list of languages that we're going to be adding in the future. But that's what we do. It's very hard to prioritize on this, because obviously we would want to put all languages out there, but we just can't.
So the thing about language, you can just carry on learning till the end of time, and you won't get through all of it.
It is amazing how much there is to know about languages and how much there is to know about how to teach a language that I didn't know early on. I mean, to be fully honest, when we launched Duolingo, we were a bunch of computer scientists who were just, trying to make a language learning site. We did not realize how difficult it would be to really teach well. By now, we've hired, and you've seen them here, some of them here at Duocon. We've hired a number of people with dozens of people with PhDs in how to teach a language. But it is amazing how little we knew back then.
Yeah, and also it's to whom are you teaching the languages? Like, what is that person's first language, and just so many dimensions of things you have to consider.
Yeah, that matters a lot. And this is why we have a different course. For example, to teach English, we have a different course to teach English for Spanish speakers than we have for Chinese speakers. Because we know that there's different things that people find difficult based on their native language. For example, I'm a native Spanish speaker. Native Spanish speakers, when they're learning English, find the word it, the pronoun it, to be very difficult to learn, because this doesn't exist in Spanish. So things that exist in your language that you can easily translate are easy to understand and learn, whereas there are certain things, for example, in German, there is these grammatical cases that honestly don't very much exist in any of the languages that I speak. So when I was early on trying to learn German, I had a really hard time even realizing what the concept is of the grammatical cases. So it has a lot to do with which languages you speak.
Yeah, I have friends who were raised speaking languages that don't have grammatical gender. So learning English, they were just like, these pronouns are interchangeable. It just means nothing to me. So there's all these huge concepts that I don't know that it's your duty to explain to people, but it's really hard to avoid explaining them as well.
Yeah, and we take, by the way, gender is a really interesting thing. We have to be careful with a lot of the stuff that we do with gender on Duolingo, because sometimes you can be outright offensive, even though, I'll say, for example, this is one thing that I'll say, that is, in Latin America, and I'll say this just because I'm Latin America, in Latin America, people refer to, this is not exactly gender, but people in Latin America refer to Asian people from Asia as chinos, as Chinese. And that's what they refer to as them. And so we have to be careful not to teach that type of stuff, even though this may occur in standard text that you read.
It's very hard to keep on top of everything that is a slur in all of 40 languages.
It is. And another thing that we have to sometimes struggle with is just diversity and things, cultural differences. I mean, we are a company that is based in the United States, so of course our values are rooted in United States culture. We have found that some things, for example, because we have users in every country in the world, sometimes, talking about alcoholic beverages in certain countries is just not okay. So we have to be, really careful about what we teach in every country, because it may be considered offensive.
Are there some things that you've learned through your own language studies or through creating Duolingo that you think, I'd never realized this about language before, and now I'm in it, it's a complete nightmare?
Oh my God, there are so many things. I mean, one of the interesting things is I learned my own native language, Spanish, significantly better because little known fact, the first Spanish course of Duolingo was done by me. And by now it's been completely rewritten by people who actually know how to teach Spanish. But I learned a ton of Spanish and things that I didn't even realize that happened. For example, somebody just pointed this out to me because they were listening to our podcast. There's actually a Duolingo podcast episode that features me, and they said, it's very strange. You said P-O, and I'm like, no, I didn't. That's not even a word. And then when I went and listened to myself, I actually was saying the word pero, but when I'm speaking fast, I just said po. And it's a perfectly normal thing. It was anybody could have understood it that understands Spanish natively, but I hadn't even understood that when you're talking, you just change a lot of it just sounds very different. I didn't really realize all of this. I also didn't realize how hard it was to explain to people who are learning Spanish the personal A. There is this concept of a personal A, which is a very weird concept that for certain nouns you have to put an A beforehand if they're a living thing versus not. It's this super weird concept. To me it was just second nature, and I didn't realize that this is a very difficult concept to explain.
And just one final question, Luis. What are you hoping is in Duolingo's future? What are you yet to achieve that you think, I would really like Duolingo to be able to do that?
Well, one of the things that I've always wanted was to teach other things that are not just language. I mean, I love teaching languages, but always Duolingo, our mission is broader. It's all of education. And we're starting to do this. We now have an app called Duolingo ABC, where it's still a little language related, but at least it's not a foreign language. Duolingo ABC is an app for kids that teaches them how to read in their native language. So for example, right now it only works for English. So it's for kids in English-speaking countries to learn how to read in English. It's entirely free. You can get it on the App Store. It's only for iPhones yet, but soon it'll come on Android. It's Duolingo ABC. So we're starting to work on things that are not other languages. I've always wanted to teach math, for example. We think that the Duolingo method can really transfer to all kinds of different subjects. And so I want to work on that. I don't know when we'll get to it. I mean, for the foreseeable future, we're mainly going to be working on languages, but I do want to tackle other subjects. And it's because I really think that education is one of the few things that can lower the socioeconomic barriers. I think inequality is one of the biggest problems that the world's tackling. And I think if you're able to educate everybody to a same level, I think that would massively reduce inequality. So that's why I'm interested in teaching all kinds of things, not just languages.
Well, Luis, thank you so much. It sounds like very exciting times at Duolingo, and looking forward to hearing what you do over the next year at next Duocon.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you for doing such a great job today. I think this was a major success.